Hi, everybody. As everybody on TikTok is being notified of this live, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to all of my Patreons. There, you're going to be finding courses, classes, workshops with me. It's just a really cool thing that's going on there, and I always make announcements there first before some other places. So, yeah, hope you're following. Thank you for following. And also a big shout out to my mods who I told about today, and a lot of them were like, hey, and we're about to go live with Emily.
And it's super fun.
That was perfect.
It worked.
Yes, it worked. Oh my god. I feel like my face is so shiny. It was actually warm here today. Like it was like near 70, which that's why I
That's
live
too
down here.
warm.
Well,
That's
okay,
my
it was
summertime warm.
yeah, that is I it's weird. It's weird because like it was freezing last weekend and now it's like not, and we'll see what happens again. But you know, my summertime warm is like 100 with like super humidity.
No way. I do not function above 80, like at all. Like if we hit 80, I'm like, oh man, I might have to go inside. Like it's too hot. We need to go to the beach.
See,
Mm-mm.
I am the opposite. I like this is something there's been some investigations where like some of them have been on live where people are asking me, they're like, "Are you okay? Like you look so scared." And I look at the camera and I'm just like, "I'm cold. I have problems channeling when I'm cold."
So does this happen to you? Because this happens to me, and I know it happens to others as well. I will go into a reading and I'll be freezing, but the second I start channeling, I like internally combust and have to like take off layers. You get so warm when you start
Yes.
diving in. And it also depends on who you're channeling. Sometimes you get the opposite, sometimes you go freezing. But
Mhm.
for the most part, if you're channeling guides and stuff, freezing, insta cold or insta warm, other way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was like, I usually get warm. I mean, that's fine that
Yeah.
you have that
No.
experience, but
The
yeah.
opposite.
Yeah, there was a study done on Tibetan monks, and because they can be out in these super frigid temperatures, and they did this study where they proved that these guys were able to raise their body temperature through meditation, which is, you know, what we also know is like going into theta. So like it's
Right.
actually scientific. People can get into that brain set of like channeling and theta and all of that and actually raise their body temperature. And like this is me reminding myself of this, like in cold places where like I have all these blankets and I'm like, if I can just focus for a second and just get warm, I can do this.
Like, I will make sure it happens. I can get warm. I can heat myself up. Oh, that's awesome. I'm not super strong in like moving my energy in like a physical sense. Like there's a lot of people that can do like the candle flame thing or like heat up their hands at will. And I've never been super good at that. But my tattoo artist, who's also a really good friend of mine, she's great at it. She's like, my hands are cold. Hold on a sec. Okay, now they're warm. I'm like, you're so mean. I want to do that.
I love that.
Right? Oh, how are you
Well,
doing? How are you feeling about the energy right now?
um, I'm preparing.
Fair, fair.
um, it's one of those things like I feel much better like this week in particular, especially after winter solstice. I finally felt like I was kicked in gear. Like I had this whole list of like post-it notes. Like it helps me to put up things I need to do on post-it notes and either fold them or like take them off and throw them away. It makes me feel
Yeah.
achieved. um but I had a whole list that had been there for like over a month. And then after solstice, I just started doing them. It wasn't even like oh, I need to complete this task. It was like,
Hmm.
oh, I can do that. And then it was just like bam, bam, bam. So I feel prepared. And I also feel like preparing because I really feel like it's kind of like that lurch on like, kind of like when you're on a roller coaster and like you get the first indication that you're about to go, and it's like it's always that kind of like whoop, and then you're like, oh, I'm okay, and then it's just like, and we go.
Fair.
So how
That's
are
fair.
you feeling?
Kind of similarly, to be totally honest. I was doing not good before the solstice, like at all. Very dense energy, like not mental health wise super great. Couldn't even really nail down the why, which is always really hard for me. Usually I can be like, guides, what is this? Like, let's channel this in, or at least I can navigate it that way. And I couldn't. And then after the solstice and, reading some things, like some stuff shifted. And I've had the motivation to do stuff, but I haven't had the tangible like resources or time to do the things. So I'm like now hitting that like frustration. Like I feel like it's building, and I'm excited for it. But I know that part of that is my like Mercury retrograde lesson of
Hmm.
like, sit still, listen, be quiet. Maybe you're not moving everything immediately and getting everything done the way you want it done right off the bat,
Hmm.
which is hard for me. But I feel that kind of coming up. And I'm excited. This next year feels a lot better going into it than the past year felt, like a lot better. And I
Yes.
am ready for that.
Yeah. I'm also curious your feelings on this. On like some of like the broader channeling that I'm doing both for myself, but like also kind of looking at how things are moving forward. I'm
Mm-hmm.
starting to get more indication from more guides, both in readings as well. Sorry, there's like this fuzz here. It's not an orb, everybody. No, I don't think anybody was like orb. So,
Well,
um,
I couldn't even see it, but I
yeah,
trust you that it
but
was
I was
there.
just like, um, it would seem that for those who are already aware of their guides, whether you know their name or what they look like, or whether you just say, okay, I know that they're there because I believe that they're there and I believe that they help. Like,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what level folks are on right now, I'm kind of getting this indication that over the next few months ish, maybe like 3-ish months, there's going to be a lot of like, all right, time to take off the training wheels. You said that you believed in me, so let's go, because there's going to be some stuff that needs to be done that will, I think, so long as people stick with it and keep going, they're going to come out of it being like, whoa, I did all of that stuff. Like, I trusted myself and I worked with myself so much. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like the guide's still around, but kind of like, holding the back of the bike a little bit and then like kind of doing this to see if you can balance and then being like, okay, all right, like that kind of feeling. Have you sensed that, or how would you
Yeah.
describe?
Um, So it's really funny you bring this up. I actually recorded a video today. I haven't posted it yet, but it's literally like my predictions for 2023 and two of the
Mm-hmm.
items basically what you just said. So the first item is essentially this notion of a lot more of the energy of genuinely in collective, no one caring what anyone else thinks anymore. And I think that leads to that like, well, I'm just going to trust myself then and just my guides then. And like, who cares what anyone else thinks? Like, I'm just going to do it my way. And it's going to be like chaotic, good energy, I think, in a lot of ways. And so I think there's a big push of a lot of spirit guide connection comes in that space. And then, like, just to build you up, to help you stand on your own.
Mm-hmm.
They'll still be there. They'll still be helping you. It's not like they're going to abandon you. But it definitely feels that energy of like, oh, you need some skill sets? Like, have some skill sets and then you can go on from there. So there's that part of it. The other part of it is I can very much feel the spiritual energy. It's done like or it's about to do. I haven't nailed down if it's done yet. I don't think it has, but it's about to do like a little like boop, like just a small little like elevator, like we go up a level.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not. It doesn't feel gradual to me. And I mean, tell me what you think on that too. It doesn't feel gradual. It feels literally like one floor up, and here we go. And I think we're going to get a lot more of like UFO sightings or people being like, I can totally see ghosts now. What is going on? Or like, you know, I hear voices now. Like, I think it's going to be kind of drastic. And I think a lot of people have started to already dabble in that. So it's not going to feel as scary. And then I think some people are going to be very overwhelmed with it. But it does feel like a collective spiritual just jump up that we're about to go on. So, yes, I agree.
Yes, and agreed on that. With who I talk to, my guides, folks I talk to on the other side. And I love talking with you because I know we work with different folks, generally
Yeah.
speaking, on the other um so
Great.
and that they work in different places and also different pantheons depending on because I know other people are I regularly check in with people who work with folks from different pantheons too, and it's been interesting, this collective understanding of something's coming, and I like how you described it, where it's not so much like a this, it's going to be like a pop, and it's going to be like, this is happening. I think it's going to
Hope
become
you
more
feel ready.
obvious. Yeah, it's like surprise. The thing is, though, I agree, I don't think it necessarily has to be scary, but I do think the people who have been working on themselves it's going to become a lot more apparent who has been working on them versus those who are just like, everything's happening to me and I'm caught up in the world and all these things are happening to me and like all this stuff. Which is why,
Hmm.
segue, the point of this live,
That was
I
beautiful.
wanted to
That
talk
was
about,
crisp and clean. I loved it.
love it when that happens. As I mentioned, the god or a god of communication, and I'm just like, oh, and
Yeah.
well, I was
I,
thinking of Hermes.
I
If
grabbed
anybody knows,
Hermes the hamster right before you said that too. Like right
so
before you said
good.
that, I was like, I've now made it like this is my charity to Hermes. Like, hey, when I cuddle him, you like me, right? Like, don't be mad at me.
It's like sending good vibes. It's like we're good, right?
We're buddies. You like me.
Oh goodness. See, on the opposite side, that's like me going to the beach in the middle of the summer and being like, Apollo, you didn't kill me. I don't have cancer. You like me, right?
Totally.
Yeah, that's how that works, right? Like that's totally how that works.
100%. You nailed it. For anyone who's watching, that's not how that works.
No, it's not.
Not at all.
That is a long-standing thing of like, anyway, choices on my part.
Love it.
So, I wanted to talk about the spiritualism as well as psychology that goes into limited belief or limiting beliefs because
Hmm.
you have to acknowledge both. And I think one of the things that drew me to your platform and something that I regularly talk about myself is how much mental health is involved in spirituality, in perception, in grounding. A lot of the stuff that I do, while it's encouraged by spirit guides and who I'm working with at the time, it's very much mental health. And when I talk with people and they're
Hmm.
like, oh, I'm in therapy, I'm like, okay, so I'm going to give you a bunch of tips, but I also say go over it with your therapist just to be sure they know your psychology. I'm connecting
Yeah.
with your spirit. And so long as
Hmm.
both are aligned, they're going to work really great. But it has been of some concern, especially in this past year, how some people will go hard on like the shadow work element and ignore the fact that that's mental health work, or they'll go so far into the spirituality that they won't acknowledge the healing that they need to do that is directly affecting their psychology.
Hmm. Yeah.
Thoughts?
Yes. So I fully 100% agree that everything has to be a both and because we're both physical and spiritual beings at the same time. And that is always a huge thing that I pass on to most clients and things like that is like, hey, your body, your mental health, those sorts of things, those are like earth-based things. Yes, we can heal them with spirituality. And yes, we can also heal them with therapy, with, supplements, with eating right. Like there's a million different things that you can do that also heal your physicality in that way. And same thing with spiritual stuff. It both have to be in balance, the same way like your light and your dark have to be in balance. So does your physical and your spiritual. So yeah, completely agree with that. And I think it's so important. And there has been a big uptick. Some people feel more comfortable diving into the spiritual stuff. And some people go really hard in like the therapy stuff. And then if you're in both and you're like feeling lack, then it's when you're like, hey, maybe you might be out of balance and you can like cross over and do a little bit more on either side there. It's when you're really out of balance. And that's where we get rises of things like cults and things like not great is because that out of balance of that like the physicality aspect is entirely missing, which not it's not how can I describe it, it's really where we came here to have a both experience. If we were just doing a spiritual experience, we wouldn't be on this plane. And that's how I always put it. I guess that's the best way I
Mhm.
can recommend that.
And I'm glad you brought up or started to kind of touch on the different elements of health because I describe health in a lot of different ways. There's physical health, which I don't think necessarily means being buff and going to the gym. I think it is a matter of connecting with what your body needs.
Mhm.
I include things like educational health,
Yeah.
wanting to continue to learn, wanting to have your worldview widened and your ideas challenged so that you really get to come out and say, no, this is how I feel about stuff.
Hmm.
And all of that ties in with spiritual health as well as mental health. Somebody mentioned on my chat, therapy doesn't always play nice with spirituality. I have something to say about that, but I'm curious, what would you like to say about that?
I would say yes and no, and it depends on what you're looking for in a therapist. I have so many clients of mine that come to me for readings that are therapists. So I can guarantee that there are many therapists out there that do play nice and some don't. The first therapist I ever saw was a Christian therapist. They were based through a Christian organization. They still had their degree, they were still a therapist, but everything they did was rooted in like, then go read this passage in the Bible, right? So there's many different sides. And so sometimes, yeah, there's therapists that are like not super spiritual, but there's a lot that I guarantee you can find that are also in alignment with that. And I do want to touch on really quick, just because my guides won't leave me alone about it, is on the limiting belief and block part, because I know I talk a lot about releasing limiting beliefs and blocks. I know Rebekah talks a lot about releasing limiting beliefs and blocks. But with that, it has an effect. You can do it in a spiritual sense and pull and release those blocks, and that'll help you mentally, spiritually, and energetically and physically. Or you could do it in a less spiritual sense and work through it in therapy and identify it there and do the other things, do a lot of journaling, whatever tools you're going to use to do it on that side. And that will also affect just as many things. There's spiritual tools that can help you do it sometimes faster, sometimes easier, but I think everyone's on their own journey with how they're going to pull and release specific blocks or specific limiting beliefs. And that can be done in like so many different ways.
Yes,
So
for
many
sure.
different ways.
One thing on therapists, just as far as finding one, I know in North Carolina, especially since 2020, I, at least with, well, really, I found this therapist through a sliding scale option, which everybody, if you don't know what sliding scale options, please look them up. You may be able to afford therapy more than you think you can. There's also counselors and support groups. There's a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Though my therapist, I've never met her in person. She is almost 4 hours away, and that's because I'm able to meet with her online. And because my access is statewide, even though Wilmington's a pretty liberal place and there are a lot of like holistic practitioners and mental health people here, thank you for the gift. I suggest this to anybody who maybe feels like they're in a place like where they don't feel like they have a therapist who would be aligned with their open-minded values. I'll say that, whether you're a
Mm-hmm.
spiritualist or practitioner or whatever, but just maybe you live in a very one religion based town and you don't really adhere to that religion. And as you were saying, maybe the therapist is very based in that religion.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm sure is great for a lot of people. If that's not great for you, see if you can do online stuff.
Yeah.
It's worth looking into. So
Yeah. Yeah. There is a lot more options for that too. My therapist lives in LA, which is like 10 hours away from me, but it works. We hang out.
yeah,
Yeah. And
there
like
are,
again, it's the same thing with like picking a psychic practitioner for yourself. Like if you like get weird vibes from this person, don't go to them. It might not be aligned for you. If you're like, oh, that one is aligned for me, awesome. Like try it out, and then you have reserve the right to change your mind. Very much so too. If something comes up, you're like, ooh, that's not in alignment, you can try again. You can also ask your guides, and I do really I say this a lot, but like you can ask your guides and be like, hey, help me find the right way for me. And just like leave that open. You don't even have to put a deadline. You don't have to even say like, I need this type of therapist that does this and this. Just be like, hey, help me find the right help for me. And then just go for it that way. That in and of itself is really helpful.
yeah. There's also, it's something I've been calling intuitive web searches, where basically I connect and I say, and when I say connect, no, I hope no one out there is thinking like, oh, you meditate for 3 hours and then you can talk to your guides. No, anybody can just be like, hi, please help. I'm doing the thing. Help. And really what I'll do is, like, if I'm going down listings, I've used this a few times now, I'll kind of put my cursor over a link and I'll say this one. And then I wait for an answer. I don't wait long. Like, I suggest if anybody's doing this, yes or no, quick. If you get a mucky feeling or like a maybe, just go to the next one until you feel like yes or no, because
Mhm.
they have strong feelings. Yes feels very different from a no, whether you're getting that through clairsentience, like a physical feeling, whether you're getting that through claircognizance, where you just know it, whether you're getting that through a kind of clairaudience, where you just hear it. The vibration is just very different. So
Mhm.
I I've been using this quote from Eleanor Roosevelt a lot recently, which is the best way to begin is to begin. So
I love
try.
that. I love that. And it's a snowball. Like, especially when it comes to your guides or getting communication or starting to figure out what's yes and what's no, like start asking your guides random questions. Like it doesn't have to always, like do it for web searches. If you're looking for a specific product, start asking yes or no. If it's a big deal thing, cool. If it's not a big deal thing, cool. What should I wear today? Ask for that. What should I eat for lunch? Should I go to the store today or tomorrow? Like it's just simple things like that, just to feel it out, taking that pressure off of your like brain space makes your brain let in the pings more because it's like, oh, this isn't going to kill us. We're just figuring out what we should wear today. I'll leave that space open. And then it lets more of the pings come through. So the more you do that, the easier it's going to be more comfortable when the communication comes through.
For sure. I describe it as setting a foundation through many, many small blocks over time, that in time you have an entire foundation. And at some point, you're going to want to ask bigger questions. And instead of being like, I don't know how to trust myself, you get to look down and be like, oh, I have this entire small structure or maybe large structure, and it's right there, and I'm standing on it of me believing in me, in myself. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Um,
Someone just said, I thought we're not supposed to ask should questions. You can ask, what is in my highest and best to wear today? I rephrase that as should just because I've energetically charged the word should with what's in my highest and best. Intentionally, you can say should, but just do it for things that aren't super important. Hopefully that helps.
uh, cool, cool. Let's see. I'm just kind of going through mine. Unless you had something else to go into, I kind of wanted to open it up a bit more on like if folks have questions on how to balance psychology with spirituality. Granted, I'm a spiritual practitioner. I know my limits. I'm not a mental health professional.
Same,
Um,
same.
yeah. So would that be, unless you have something else you kind of want to go into?
I mean, not a ton other than just like let's chat about the energy of the coming year since we're doing this right now. That could be fun because I think there's cool stuff going on
Mhm.
there. Yeah, I don't know. How you feeling?
How about this? I'll open it up just because I want to give acknowledgement to those who are having cool conversations in the comments right now. But I would love to make some space for that. If we can answer a few things and then make some space, because I'm all for talking about next year. Let me tell you, like, I've been thinking
Right?
about it.
Me too. So
Woo.
someone just said I do struggle with balancing the physical and the spiritual. And they tend to like skew towards the physical. That doesn't make you less spiritual if your comfort element is more physical stuff. You can
Mhm.
even incorporate more physical spiritual things to help with you then. Like that's when I always say like start using tools more because that's actually a physical thing you can manipulate and work with, like cards or like lighting candles or doing rituals or working with crystals or a pendulum, like anything like that is really going to pull that, like kind of balance out both of those halves. If you skew naturally towards the physical, then work on the physical and ask yourself and brainstorm how you can make that area more spiritual if that's what feels good. Um, and vice versa, if you skew towards the spiritual and disregard the physical, do the opposite. Maybe go on a walk when you're meditating, or do something else like that where you're doing some physical stuff. Or take a second each day to like ask your body questions. What is your body feeling? Let's hear from them as if they're a guide, because they are. Our bodies have a different consciousness than our soul selves do. It's basically just a little support system we have, and we get to be friends with it while we're here. And so you can always ask your body for additional information or other things that are going on.
Yeah. I wonder too if anybody out there is drawn to using more physical things. That could just be a sign that there's some part of you that wants to work on your clairsentience or your clairtangence or
Mm-hmm.
clairtangency.
Yeah.
Um, there's, I'm going to mention a limiting belief that I used to have, which was because I had taken some mediumship courses, and some of them were so based in the mediumship that I kind of felt weirdly ungrounded because I like holding things sometimes, or I like using divination tactics. And I was starting to be led down this like road of you should just be able to sit there and do it. And while I agree with that, and it's not necessarily I'm walking around town with all of my, comfort items and that kind of thing. I created this limiting belief for myself that if I couldn't do it without any assistance whatsoever, I sucked. Like, which was a really hard thing to do. Um,
That's
now,
brutal.
yeah, yeah. And that's the thing. Sometimes the very talented psychic mediums, sometimes they don't have the issues of having to reopen their skill levels or be able to really feel the energy of somebody who's going through that. They
Hmm.
have always been good at it, essentially, and they're just like, well, you can either do it or you can't. Which I know you and I are both like, no, that's not how it works. Um,
No, no,
so,
there's a million and a one thing ways to do anything.
mhm.
Um, yeah, and I had a very similar limiting belief for a very long time. And for me, it was like, well, if I can't see it, I'm not doing it right. It's like, what? There's so many other senses you can use. And then once I started playing in that aspect of all the different psychic senses, all the like, you have more psychic senses than you even have physical senses. Then it's like, oh, wait, I've actually been getting pings about this forever. I can just expand in this area. This is how this information actually comes through. And then you can branch out from there. I do think a lot of people, especially in like the older, I don't mean to say this in a negative way, but like older school, we're talking like 90s, early 2000s, like
Mhm.
television mediums and things like that were very much like, I can just stand here and tell you about you and tell you about you. And it felt very much like people were trying to model themselves after that. And that's not always how it works. Sometimes you need to hold a picture of a person, or sometimes you need to have certain things around you, or have a candle lit, or like maybe you need to be wearing something to tune. I mean, there's a million different things that can help you. And it's a matter of like figuring those things out.
Yeah, it's like if you're having to do a presentation and you're not allowed to even have like a note card, like
Mhm.
it's, I encourage people to cut themselves a break. And I've had to learn that lesson. And that was honestly a huge lesson I learned this year of offering myself grace and, doing things that just make me feel good. Like you never know who you're going to meet, especially with when we're doing consultations, or, for those of you who are, you're starting to pick up on pings and that sort of thing, and you're with a new group of people and stuff starts happening. Like you can't always control who you're with, but you can control how you feel about yourself. And if that
Mhm.
means you wear certain stuff or you carry certain stuff, does it
Mhm.
hurt anybody else?
No,
No. Like,
absolutely. It was funny. I saw your Monticello video, or Monticello, or I don't know how you say it. And
yeah,
like, I didn't
Monticello.
know, I didn't even read it, but I saw your face. I was like, oh no, bad energy. And you were like, here for bad energy. I'm like, oh, awesome. Oh, so just so you're talking about like giving yourself grace. That's the other thing you need to give yourself grace for. If you guys are going to try to do stuff in public, you will make weird faces. You will look weird. It will be fine. It just is what it is. The amount of times I've caught like a human, an actual human staring at me when I've been in deep conversation with like not a human at that, been like, oh, sorry. My bad.
Hmm.
I'm gonna leave the coffee shop now. It just is what it is. But like, I think that's something to talk a little bit about the new year too. I think that's something more people are opening up to, of like this comfort in like doing it their way and letting that be freeing. Absolutely.
Yeah. I will say, we were talking about educational health, or I mentioned that earlier.
Hmm.
Monticello was educational health. It was uncomfy. Like I knew it was
Hmm.
going to be uncomfortable. It's Thomas Jefferson's home. Um, I knew that. Like, and that's the
Hmm.
thing. I went there to learn more about the history. I was actually, they've done a lot of work there over the last 5 years since I came under fire to also tell stories of Black people who were forced to work there. They are no longer ignoring that history, which they pretty much were for a long time.
Hmm.
So it was a lot. Uh, it wasn't like beating over anybody's head or anything like that, but a lot of statistics were given, and that was necessary.
Yeah.
We ran into a lot of spirits. And even in the video, it was like, I get out and I'm like, I want to throw up. Rupert's like, are you shielding right now? Are you shielding right now? I'm like, oh, I thought I was. Apparently I am not. So it was
Hmm.
validating though, because Kat's a medium as well. And like, we were the ones in the tour group, like as we're walking around this house, and she straight up saw Thomas Jefferson. And like, we're both like having this moment of like, and like, we're trying to act normal around like these normal people, and both of us are just like holding each other like, that's, yeah, right, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Ooh, always an adventure, always an adventure. Anywho, I feel like we were on like a subject or something.
We were on a subject and then we got off of the subject. It's because it's Mercury retrograde. I swear I can't hold a single damn idea in my brain for like longer than a minute. It's just
Yo, that,
distraction.
yeah, that explains a lot of my conversations today with people, because we would both kind of be like, yeah, 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 and there was a pause, and we are like, where are we? And then I'd be like, guide of theirs. Hello. Sorry. Where were we?
I don't know. It's just every idea. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and then it's 2 hours later, and I was like, I was going to definitely do that, but that idea just came in, and now it's gone. So I guess I'm not gonna do that. Like,
It'll come back just in six
it
months or
will.
something. That's fine.
Yeah, totally good. Totally good.
Okay, so I'll just go through my comments, which thank you
Yeah.
everybody. I love how wonderful y'all are, like with having these conversations and being kind to each other. And thanks to my mods for taking care of business for the times that you have to take care of business. I do appreciate
Oh, I have
that.
a good question.
Yeah.
Someone said, "Hey, ladies, I'm a medium as well, and I was training with my grandma, but she passed on. Now what do I do?" And I think that is a great question. I would try to keep training with her. Like I would still.
It's like, keep going.
I know. I was like, I saw your face. I was like, I know what Rebekah's gonna answer. It's the same. Honestly, now obviously you were set up with some like base level skills and tools from her, and so you can try to reach out with to her in the spirit space. I have a feeling though, and this usually happens when people pass on, that now it's time to like reach out to other resources and kind of branch out further. So just dive in, see what feels good. Look up stuff on YouTube. Like, does that feel good? Like, just read some things. I don't even have a bunch of recommendations because I really always recommend like go into a Barnes Noble or go online or whatever and feel out what feels good to you and start there, because I think that's always really important, especially after something like that has been pulled from you, kind of. But now it's like continuing a legacy, and that is something really special that you get to do. I think that's incredible. But I'm sure if you ask your grandma, she will still help you.
Mm-hmm. It's not even learning a new language. It's just acknowledging a different language that was always there, but isn't exactly verbal or visual.
Yeah.
One thing I'd recommend too, and this is for anybody looking to reconnect with past loved ones, if it helps you to have a photo out, have a photo out. If it
Mm-hmm.
helps you to hold something that was theirs or perhaps something that they gave you. I have been describing most recently, like, if people want to bring somebody in, talk to them in your mind's eye, or if you want to draw out a picture or read a description, go to a comfortable place with them in a kind of daydreamy sort of state. Ask
Mm-hmm.
them to come in. It could be like a living room where you two would like hang out, and it was cool and it was easy, and it wasn't always, wow, so exciting or super sad. It was just sort of like, this is where we exist.
Mm-hmm.
Invite them in and just be like, hey, if you would like to show up, that would be super wonderful. And I would like to essentially vibe with you or ask you questions. And when you ask the questions, get curious with yourself. See how you are perceiving. Maybe you're getting it through mental eye clairvoyance. Maybe you are getting physical sensations. Maybe you just are getting downloads of stuff that Maybe you're hearing it.
Yeah.
Some people will have clairsalience where they will smell things, or clairgustance where they will taste things. It's once again get curious with anything that you feel at the very beginning. So long as
Hmm.
you're comfortable and you're in a, chill space and you feel like everything is good. Well, everything is good is a bit of an exaggeration. So long as you feel okay.
Yeah.
That's what.
As long as you're not like feeling bad feelings about it, like danger feelings, you're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say too, uh, if you are starting to ever feel disconnected or overwhelmed, it could be
Hmm.
because you are still grieving, and that is a process to honor. So honor it as you can and understand that you will, in time, learn how to harbor that grief.
Yeah.
And in being able to harbor that grief, that's how you'll be able to be more open to perceiving things in time.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I mean, pay attention to your dream space. Pay attention to your day to day too. Is there specific validation you'd like from that past loved one? Also, if you're trying to do stuff in mediumship space, and I really stress this out, especially if you're just starting out, please ask for the specific past person you're wanting to talk to come into the room. Don't just be like, my room is open. Who wants to talk to me? Don't do that, please. Please, please, please don't do that. I can't stress it enough. If you want to talk to a specific past person, that's great. If you want to talk to a specific guide, even if you don't know who that guide is, but be like the guide that helps me with this thing, or any one of my closest spirit guides, like have some parameter there. That is when you if you throw the doors wide open, you really open yourself up to anyone who might want to come in and chat. And that could be like your neighbor's passed on uncle. That could be random ghosts from 5 streets away. That could also be like other historical figure that just never passed on. I mean, there's so many different things. So if you're just starting out with any part of this, please pick a specific thing to invite in first, and not into your energy field, but into your safe space first, because don't just throw the doors wide open. It's too much.
Yeah,
It's too much.
and that's something you and I have had similarities on where we're channeling, because when it comes to past loved ones, because you've mentioned this as well in lives before too, it's both
Yeah.
of us have to be specific with who we're talking about. Otherwise, randos come in. And it's always made me wonder, and granted, this could just be, differences in psychic medium, how we read and that kind of thing. I can do that with spirit guides because they're always very specific. It's always like, these are the
Mhm.
folks that are tied to this person. But like, I think about mediums who they always seem to like hit the mark of like, this is your father and this is why, and that kind of thing. And I'm like, that's
Mhm.
so cool. If I just throw open the door, random. It's not that it's like not people who are affiliated with, it's just like random people who maybe they hadn't even talked to for 15 years, and then they're like, oh, I didn't know that you were still hanging out. And they're just like, I'm not, I just showed up. And I'm just like, okay, but who did you want to talk to? Can you just tell me who you actually wanted to talk to, and we'll talk to them?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I fully agree with that. Sometimes I can do that. Like, oh, I think your dad is here. And that's
Mm-hmm,
when
sure.
I leave. So for my mediumship room, the door is
Mm-hmm,
accessible to knock on, but it
mm-hmm,
only can be someone who has a very, very deep tie to that person that I let knock on the door. So if I'm
mm-hmm,
doing just normal channeling, talking to your spirit guides, looking at your energy field, whatever it is, and all of a sudden I'm feeling like knock or pressure on like my mediumship door, I'm like, oh, something's here. And that's when I can get like more specific with it, which is like my own filtering system. But yeah, that's not, I know it's like other people are really good at that sort of thing. I'm
mm-hmm,
not super passionate about the particular part of psychicness.
mm-hmm,
Spirit guides and stuff are I mainly work with spirit guides, energy fields, and higher selves. Like that's my trifecta of what I
mm-hmm,
work
mm-hmm.
on in a reading. And then of course I can tune into past lives. That's a big one, or past loved ones, or you name it. But
Mm-hmm.
that's a big, for that
And
same reason. It's like I don't want to just throw open the door. If you want to talk
yeah,
to somebody, let me know, and I will call them in and see if they come in because they still have their own free will. But I don't want to throw open the door.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's always, I'm regularly putting stuff out there that says something similar, where it's just like, hey, just like all lawyers don't all specialize in the same stuff, or all teachers don't specialize in the same stuff, or all accountants don't all specialize in the same stuff. Mediums are the same way. We may have, or psychics, because I know you prefer being called psychics. Psychics, apparently you're multiple psychics.
Many
um,
people.
you're many psychics. Uh, but with
Just three
anybody who
raccoon
works,
psychics in a trench coat. We're good. We're good.
I mean, beautiful. That's wonderful. Um, but while, you know, all of us can be able to tap in and have like awareness of different levels and different beings and vibrations and frequencies and energy and whatever you want to call it, uh, some of us specialize in specific stuff. And so, like, for those people who regularly work with past loved ones and like that is their bread and butter and that's what they do, I I think that's wonderful. You also have
Mhm.
to work with a lot of grief when you do that. And that's why
Yeah.
for me, it's while it's something that I can do, it's like I have to be very sparing on how much I do because I just put such a high emphasis on mental health that I want to be sure that people are also taking care of themselves and not just looking for they left with the answers and that kind of thing. Like I guess that kind of goes back to the whole mental health like limiting beliefs thing. But do you know what I'm talking
Mhm.
about?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sometimes fosters unhealthy connection, which is also why I don't specifically do just mediumship focused readings, is
Hmm.
because of that. And I'm not saying like don't want to talk to your people who have passed on. By all means, talk to them. That's wonderful and great. But
Yes.
they don't have all the answers even after they pass. They're still mostly them. And they're still like learning and doing those sorts of things. I did have someone ask a second ago how to turn on and off psychic ability stuff because that is a big fear. And I think that's also really applies to the mental health component too, because you can't be spiritually psychic on all the time. It's not healthy. So you need to have a system to turn it on and off. There's a couple
Hmm.
different ways that I always say recommend to do this. One is literally give yourself a light switch or an open door, like a door that's open. Now you're psychic. You have like a visualization, or when I say visualize, see, sense, hear, feel, know, taste, or smell. That you know the door is open, and then when you want to not stop being psychic for a minute, you can close the door, or literally like a big light switch or a lever. Like give yourself something you do that signifies yes versus no, or even like drop a gate in front of your energy and then raise the gate up. Like whatever feels good to you, but giving yourself that actually works. And it also helps to discuss some boundaries and parameters with your spirit guides. Be like, hey, when this is closed, don't let anything come in, please. Like, unless it's an emergency and you need to get a hold of me, like, I don't want to know. Or vice versa. Okay, when this is open, help me see the things I need to see. Help facilitate the energies I need to understand.
Hmm.
And it it really helps. What about you? What do you think of that?
Yeah. I use a lot of visualization in my practice, and if anybody
Mhm.
out there has trouble with this visualization, or you perhaps have aphantasia, I find pictures online, find descriptions in books.
Mhm.
For me, because I'm a high visualizer, I can think of it, but for anybody out there who may be different from me and think in different ways, use the tools that other people have channeled in some capacity, use them for you.
Mhm.
So for me, if I need a break, sometimes I will create a particular kind of shield.
Mhm.
I've worked with some people. I'm like, hey, if it's loud for you, make your shield a brick wall. Like, go ahead
Mhm.
all the way around you and let everybody know, hey, this is my brick wall. We're not getting through this. This is I need space to human in here.
Mhm.
Um, Another thing that I do, like, say I'm turning the switch on, so to speak, is I release, I ground, and then typically like I'll just imagine this kind of like connection point that goes from me into like a higher conscious collective. And I'll simply say something akin to I'm connected to the conscious collective and I'm therefore connected with whoever I'm about to talk to,
Mhm.
um, with their consent, etc.
Yeah,
um,
affirmations are huge. Affirmations
mhm,
are so helpful. Like people underestimate. Like just something as simple as that really helps. Really,
mhm,
really
mhm.
helps.
And I'll be real, when I started saying that, it took me a little while to believe that because
Mhm.
we are in a journey, right? Like sometimes I would say it to make myself believe. And then now that I say it, it's really the flip of the switch.
Mhm.
Um, Sometimes I had to say it a few times to be
Yeah.
like, I'm connected to the conscious collective. And then I'll be like, I am connected. Like I am for real. Um, Really with affirmations, what I found is like, say what you mean what you say.
Mm-hmm.
That is the magic, and feel what you say.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm connected, I get, sometimes I'll get like a warmth that goes up my spine, or like I'll get like kind of excited jitters, but not like in an ungrounded way. Um, but yeah, I'd say, especially because I know some of you may live in loud homes, whether that's ghosts or whether that's the energy of those in your home. Create safe spaces for you, whatever that means, even if that's a corner. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
y'all know I have a tent. That's my safe space. Even though I feel very safe in my home in general, that is my space. I have it decked out so that it feels very, very comfortable at any time. All I do is kind of dive in there and I can breathe.
Mm-hmm.
So, anybody, whether that's building a tent or whether that's being like, this is my corner, and there gets to be no clutter in my corner. I have my pillow and I have my headphones, and it is mine. And that makes me feel good. We are in the
Yeah.
physical. I think it's important that we maintain safe spaces for ourselves, even if that's going out into nature and being like, this tree, I like this tree. This is a safe space for me right now. That's okay too.
Yeah, very, very much so. I fully agree with all of that, very much so. Another thing that can be really helpful if you are just starting out and you're like, ooh, I really want to walk myself into my abilities, use it for a minute and then walk myself out. Find a theta meditation, or even just use like a stairway that goes up above you, up through the universe, up to the very, like until you hit some like white light, beautiful energy there. Then it's basically triggering your brain to go into the theta brainwave, which is the channeling brainwave. It's where you, right before you fall asleep, that's the brainwave you're entering into, which is why you get all of your inspiration, your ideas, right as you're falling asleep, because you're naturally going to theta brainwave and channeling stuff in. But that's a really nice way to do that. And then you can just walk back down the staircase, especially if you're starting out. That's really, really helpful. And it's something that you will gradually get quicker and quicker and quicker. You don't always have to do it, but it takes that little bit of time to get you adjusted. And that's perfectly fine. You can absolutely do that.
Yeah. And just because I will shout this from the rooftops, theta brain state, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is an ability.
Yeah.
So, once again, for anybody out there that's like, oh, your gifts, you have these gifts, I maintain an ability. And it's something that anyone can do. And
Yeah.
that's why, like, for anybody who wants to connect, whether that's with themselves, whether that's something greater, whether with that, if that's with their past loved ones, for some people
Mm-hmm.
it's just like getting into a daydreamy state, or it's just like acknowledging what happens right before you fall asleep, or as you're waking up, though it is something that can be grown.
Mm-hmm.
So please, for anybody out there still listening to this, please know it's something you can do. It is
Yeah.
something literally everybody can do.
Absolutely. 100%. Everyone can be psychic. Everyone can connect. You just do it in your own way, and you just have to
Yeah.
find out what your own way is, and then you can grow it and expand it, and that's the beauty and the fun of it. Someone asked another really great question that I think applies again with the mental health side, which I think is great. You guys are tying in awesome. Good job. Also, thank you all so much for being here. I just like love and appreciate you all. Do you think TikTok / social media / tech messes with your abilities or clarity? Yes, depending upon what mental state I'm in, 100%. I will openly say that. Now, sometimes it actually helps me because I'll be like, okay, like I need some validation. I'm not leaving my house today. I'm just gonna scroll through TikTok, give me some validation that way. Sometimes I curate my feed intentionally to be as high vibration as possible for me because I know that if I'm in that world too much, then it will just kind of really get heavy on me mental health wise because I know my own sensitivities. Everyone has to have their own kind of filter there. Once I put it down and step away, does it affect my ability to tap in? No, I don't think, unless I'm in a really bad mental health place. And then if I'm in a really bad mental health place, then it's probably not good for me to be on a lot of social media anyway. So it really just depends. I tend to shield myself pretty significantly before scrolling through any type of social media ever. That's really important, and I highly recommend everyone does that. But it's really your own natural flow, and if it works for you or doesn't work for you. I know some people actually get super boosted by scrolling through TikTok or Instagram or whatever social media, and that really helps their clarity because they're getting a lot of people's energy in their same space. It genuinely depends on the person. What do you think?
Yes, for sure. But I agree with you. It does go into the mental health space. So, for example, in between consultations, I am not getting on social media. I'm not getting on TikTok. It's not because I'm expecting something bad to happen, but I remember when I was more self conscious about my platform and what people said, if I looked at that in between consults, it could really affect me. Um, so I don't so much do that anymore. And you know what? I'm fine because I can check social media at other times. So really, it's just a reminder for me to be like, I always give myself roughly 15 to like 5 minutes between consults, just kind of recharge. That's what I found I
Mhm.
need. And, instead of looking at social media, I will crawl out of my tent. I feel like such a cave like troll. I will crawl out of my tent and
So yeah,
yeah, I'll
I
look
work
out.
in a tent. Like you guys can't see it, but you'll see it soon. I'm redoing my whole office, but maybe I can kind of show. But it's like tent-like on the
Yes,
side, and so you'll see it. I'm like TPing it up. It's
love it.
gonna be interesting.
That's what I'm saying. Tense.
So I get
It's
it.
not.
I get it. I get your tent energy.
But yeah, I crawl out and then I'll look outside, or I will look at the wall, or I'll just like lay down and look at the ceiling, and it allows me to recharge.
Mhm.
Um, Another thing that I've started doing is I will cleanse off my devices. I typically do that with, I'll just like light some incense. And usually, one of the things I do, if it works for anybody, do it, whatever. But I'll take like my phone and I'll take the incense and like, as if I'm unraveling something from my phone, and then I'll just like
Mhm.
flick it off with the smoke.
Yeah.
Um, oh, is
I
that
do the same
selenite?
thing, but it's a selenite one, but it's twisty on purpose, so I can just sit there above my phone and twist it like this to
Mm-hmm.
unravel it upwards. Same,
Mm-hmm.
same.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I do the same thing with my computer as well, because I use my computer for work and I use my computer for a lot of things. So I was talking with a friend the other day about how I do have to budget for newer computers for all of the editing and things that I do. And I was just like, wait, people have computers that don't work. And I'm like, I would die. Maybe, no, I wouldn't die, but like, I shouldn't say things
Yeah.
like that. But I would be at a disadvantage, especially, oh man, I'm gonna have to remove that feeling all off my room just now. Okay. Okay. Anyway, especially with Mercury in retrograde happening, I'm just like,
I know. It's like you just
you know what?
hey Rebecca.
I got some instance right here. I'm just gonna remove that right out of my
Do it. Do it. Get it out of your space. The other thing, though, I always say too is like everything has a consciousness. So I can actually talk to the consciousness of my phone or the consciousness of my
Mhm.
computer and be like, hey, are you needing some healing somewhere? That gets really existential, and I understand that. So, like, don't think into that too hard because you will be very much down a rabbit hole you don't want to go down. But just know that everything has a consciousness, and it is possible to channel in that consciousness. It takes some effort sometimes. That's not a very natural ability for a lot of people, but I've worked really hard at it in order to be able to talk to my phone and release stuff from my phone. I've done it to every tattoo I've ever gotten. I've talked to the ink before it came in, so that I communicated with it and understand we're on the same page. But you can do that with like tech stuff as well, and it's really, really helpful. That being
Yeah.
said, it doesn't always give you the answers you want, so don't think that it's going to because it has its own consciousness. But yeah, that's another way to do that. I'm glad you
I
cleansed your energy.
also, yeah,
I'm glad you took that off.
yeah, I just, um, with my appliances, phones, especially with my car, one way that while I can tap into some of that energy, the main thing that I do is I communicate to said devices what I appreciate about them. So
Mm-hmm.
just that they know, I'm like, hi. Like every time my car turns on, because she's a 2012, she's doing real well. I appreciate her so much. Every time, like before I turn on the car, I usually like put a hand on the wheel and I'm like, all right, here we go. And then I turn on the car works, and I'm like, thank you, thank you. This
Thank,
is
thank
like
you for
people have
this.
seen this and
I
they're just like,
appreciate you. Yeah, I get
so
it.
next time I get to my computer, I'm gonna be like, thank you. Thank you for
Huh?
working. I so appreciate you.
Uh-huh. Yep. I mean, it's important. It's helpful. Um, Couple quick things, just because you're on here and I haven't got to talk to you about this yet. What do you have like manifestations you're calling in for the new year that feel aligned with the new year? Are you setting those? Do you feel like there's cool energy coming? Like, how are you doing with that?
So clearly, I have not given the cognitive thought to this that I should have. Um,
Sorry, pop quiz
no,
out of left
this
field. Enjoy.
this is good. This is good because I've been thinking recently about like things that I need to do to have more reflection in what I'm doing.
Mhm.
Um, let's see, a good affirmation for this year in picking up on some energy that's already happened. Because I think so metaphorically. Because sometimes I feel like I'm a ball that's rolling, but I don't. It's not an out of control ball. It's not like somebody just went like pow. It's just more like
Mhm.
I am the movement of the ball. Um, hmm.
It's funny because my word of the year is movement, so you're just like speckling it.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah, that's what I've decided for this next year. It's going to be movement. Like things are going
mm-hmm,
to move. Oh, I don't know why, but like I know the later half of the year that was very stagnant for a lot of people. Like the later half of this past year, 2022 has been just really heavy. It's been really dense. It's a lot of us like working through our own like mud path that we're like trudging on. So it doesn't
mm-hmm,
mean things aren't happening. It just feels like we're not feeling them happen. But then this upcoming year, it's just like, okay, let's just do stuff. Like that's how the energy just kind of feels, which isn't always wonderful, but it's just movement, and I just love.
mm-hmm. Yeah, because once again on the metaphors, anybody who's had a reading with me, you're gonna get all the metaphors. Um, unless literally today a guide was like, "No, I don't like your metaphors," and I was like, "Okay, how would you like to do this?" And they were like, "I will tell you what to say," and I was like, "Thank you." So that was fun. I was like, "Understood, sir." Um, that's not a common thing, but I wanted to honor that this guide was just very straightforward. They were just like, "No, I just want it to be said as I'm saying it," and I'm like,
Mhm.
I respect that.
It's interesting because I like sometimes I go into readings, I'll be like, oh, okay, like let's tune into the guides, and they will come through with like the most interesting personalities. And I'm like, okay, well then, I
Hmm.
guess this is what we're saying. Or they'll
Hmm.
just scream something that seems totally random. I have a quote. I don't know if you do this. I have a quote in my readings. If anyone's ever gotten a reading with me with this, I've probably explained it. Where if it's something random that is like not connected to anything that we're talking about, they have to tell me 3 times or I won't say it, partly because I'm like, does this matter or are you just trying to get attention? Which happens. Like your guide sometimes just notice me. And it's like, why did you yell pineapple at me? Like that made no sense. But if you say it 3 times, I'll be like, fine, I will pass it on. And that's where I'll get that like random, like, I don't want a metaphor. This is what I'm saying. It's like, okay, does the name Liliana mean anything to you? Because they just yelled it at me like 4 times. Like that sort of energy. Because
You know,
sometimes that's how guides roll.
yeah, I love that rule of yours, and I would like to apply it because, especially with Mercury in retrograde, I and that's the thing. I'm also a person. I'll go for the ride. Like sometimes guides will be like, "Oh, the last time I was incarnated, I looked like this, and I lived here, and I knew the person, and like this
Mm-hmm.
and this and this." And then I'm just like, "This is really fascinating." What about now though? Like, what they're like two others that also want to talk, and like, what is?
Mm-hmm.
So, um, but getting back to the original metaphor, I can do this. Uh, talking about the ball idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
And talking about this past year, I felt like my ball has been kind of tied up to like it's like a bungee cord. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
like it's been stagnant and my ball's been able to roll around and it's been able to go forward. And I feel like it's just been leading up to being able to break that. And then I like the idea of my ball no longer has this cord attached to it. It just burned up as soon as it was like freedom and gone.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's how I feel. The thing is though, one, maybe this is an air sign thing. I'm kind of like, I can fly. That ball can jump everywhere. I'll be fine. Like seriously, I don't say that like a sarcastic I'll be fine, but I'm just like, that's how I live my life. Yep. Um, but there's
Mm-hmm.
been a pickup of speed with
Yeah.
things. But I'm curious because I kind of feel like there's going to have to be a lot of self motivation in the next like 3 or so months in order to keep up the speed of
Yeah.
what you feel is right. And then after that, it's going to be a lot of like, all right, you made it. Like, not necessarily in a downward direction, but just sort of like, and we're going now. Like, does
Mm.
that resonate with you?
Oh, totally. I keep recommending in readings. Also, for anyone who might want a reading for the new year, I am doing a group reading tomorrow. So the information for that, if you want to join in for a new year reading, I'm usually booked out months and months. So I decided to hold a group reading for anyone who wants guidance on yourself for the new year. That information is where you can click on my page, the clicky spot. So in case anyone wants to do that, I have that opening, just offered out there. But I have been feeling something very similar. And in readings, I keep saying to everyone, like, for the next month, just focus on things that make you feel creative again. Because that's where that like self motivation, sort of fun energy is going to come from. And so I keep being like, yeah, do that for the next month. Like it keeps coming up for people. And I think that is like the perfect, basically for the month of January, do creative things, even if it's super small, like even if it's just playing music that day or, drawing a little happy face on the corner of a paper or whatever it is, even if it's tiny creativity, that is the thing that I think is going to give that self kind of motivation to take us into the next 3 months to get us to exactly what you're tuning into. March
Mm-hmm.
is going to be big too. Like astrology wise, astrologers are saying that. I know I talked to Krista about it, but also like just when I look at the energy, I'm like, cool stuff is going on. I don't know what it is, but I'm stoked on it. And the fact that I don't know what it is probably means that the world hasn't caught up with anything we're going to understand when we look at it. But March feels cool. I like it.
I think too, just kind of from what I'm getting, it's sort of like a feeling of people have to come together. They just have
Mm-hmm.
to.
Yeah.
And there will be those who don't want to, but I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier with the people who are putting in the effort. Like, I don't like to say work,
Mm-hmm.
but like the people who are putting in the effort to connect with themselves, to connect with the idea of what could be out there, even if they don't want to define it. Just once again,
Mm-hmm.
going back to that mental health aspect of it, an element of it, of like, hey, anything can happen, but all I can control is how I react to it. So I feel like around that time, I see people coming together because they're just going to be like, wow, a lot has happened. And we want to feel
Mm-hmm.
human. We want to have human experiences. We want to feel seen. And I
Yeah.
think that's when people talking with one another, perhaps people who don't all believe the same thing, but can have a conversation, that's how good change happens.
Yeah. I agree with that. I also think that spirits and guides and stuff around that time will also want to be seen. So just like keep that in mind for everyone else.
Yeah, I get that feeling as well.
Mm-hmm. A lot of
Maybe
like,
not like a full on like coming back, but just a sort of like, I am here. I have been here, but I'm here kind of thing.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
So yeah.
Nice. I appreciate
We
that. I know. Look at us go. I feel like this has been the most tangenty Mercury retrograde live that we've done. I love it. It's been really fun, but also I feel like we've been very like, wee, let's go over here. Wee, that way too.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Mercury in retrograde, there was one this past year that was particularly rough. Uh
The one in
I'm drawing.
fall, because that one kicked my butt.
Um it may have been that one. That's another thing with this year. Now when I look back at it, like unless I have milestones, I'm just like, wow, that happened, which is why I need to reflect. So I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna do that tonight. This was my wake up call. I'm going to reflect on this year tonight. I already did some of that for the solstice, and I spoke on some of that for my life. But I think for the journaling aspect and just being like connecting with me, I think I'm gonna do. You know what? No, I am going to do that. There is no think. There is I am. Anyway. But yeah, besides that one Mercury in retrograde, and maybe it's because I'm an Aquarius, but it's something about sometimes when Mercury in retrograde comes, I'm kind of like, oh, we're going to the wild party. That's the party we're going to right now, the wild one. Okay, yeah, like
Mhm.
let's go to the wild party.
Right? Well, also, Hermes is your friend. So that's a little helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I literally have a Mercury bee, and it's still not nice to me. This bee has Mercury in it. It is the symbol of Mercury. It is dedicated to the planet Mercury. And it's still rude.
Yeah, that's fair. You should call me out on that because of who I work with. So that's
Yeah.
entirely.
But I mean, that's also like encouraging for people. Like if you're looking to someone to work with, like you can actually like do charity towards different guides or deities that, you know, or planets even that can help with certain things like this. So me and Hermes were better. We're mended. We like resolved our differences, but a little
I
bit.
get that. Yeah. Goodness, I remember, I'll just say this as an aside, because I don't want to put out there, Hermes is for everybody. Now, well, as I say that, he's kind of like, yeah. And I'm like, no. But that's his vibe though. That's the trickster part of him where he's just kind of like, yeah, everybody work with me. And I'm like,
Please
um,
don't.
yeah, it's he's not for everybody. And when I first started working with him too, I was kind of like, really, is this gonna work? Because I was very straight laced and I didn't find his jokes funny. And every now and then I still don't find the jokes funny, but they do teach me things. And so I get to be like, all right, that was my wake up call. Thank you. I needed that. Yep. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He's definitely not one of my guides, but we're at least friends now. So I will honor that. We're at least not play fighting the way that we were the last couple months. He's not for everybody though. He's very intense. That I've had a lot of people be like, should I work with Loki? And it's the same energy of like, maybe, but go in with baby steps and see how it feels. And there's other there's other trickster deities or like deities that are very in that way that I'm always like, take baby steps, see if they want to work with you, and go from that. Like, work forward that way.
Yeah. Goodness, I think about with Hermes, like I just started making cakes, and I was like, I don't know what I want out of this, but here's a cake. Like I would just be like, I don't know how this works. Here you go. Like
Someone just said my live glitched right as I said Hermes is definitely not my guide, which I think is absolutely hilarious. He's not. We've talked about it. We've gone into it, but it's just him absolutely messing with everyone as much as possible, and I appreciate that. Also, someone else right below that said, "Do all mediums and psychics have to work with deities?" No, that is your choice. 100% your choice. I actually got my start working with deities. Not my start, but my restart. I'm going to say it. I got my restart doing deity work because that felt familiar to me, mostly because I've always loved fiction books. And I was like, okay, well, myths are fiction books. How can I incorporate this and kind of tap into that? So that is very much where I got my like restart into spirituality. Do I work with deities a ton now? Not a ton. Only the ones that I know are my guides or the ones that have decided to play fight with me, apparently. So there's that. Or unless they bug me. Sometimes they'll bug you. Like sometimes all of a sudden, like you'll get very clear messages that you need to talk to a specific person. And usually I come in like, God, what? Like, what do you want? Why do you want to bug me? So no, it is not required.
Yeah. In fact, like my relationship with Hermes as it's grown has been more like at first it was, hey, here's a cake. And then it was, hey, I live in a bus. Can you help with that? Like for transportation. And then it was, I got more interested in what he specializes in, like what he does, work as a psychopomp. Like, and so I started to study what he's done, what he's known for. I started to meditate on that. Though now, unless it's something like big problem, I do try to handle things on my own, just because I respect the time and energy and, you know, for what it's worth, efficiency for the knowledge that I obtained. So now I believe, and granted, people will work with different deities in different ways. So please don't take this as like, for anybody watching, if this is how it has to be. But for me, it was like, I want to learn from you. And so I have been in different capacities. And now I can use what I've learned without constantly having to be like, hey, I made another cake for you because I got into a problem and I found this whole bunch of ghosts and huh?
That's fair. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also important to remember with deities, they're just beings that incarnated in their like full form on planet at a certain period of time. So it's not
Mhm.
like they're so much more powerful than you. They just got like the whole map going on and they can talk to you about stuff. It doesn't mean that you are low and much less powerful than them. It's just they have the book and you just have the cover. So like
Mhm.
just keep that in mind as a balance. I feel like we should just do our next live all about deity work because like apparently that's what we need to talk about.
I would love that.
Next week?
Goodness. We will
Yeah.
discuss on that because
No, yeah, I'm just kidding.
without knowing my calendar, I will not agree to anything without being able to look at it thoroughly
Fully agree. But
first.
sometime soon we'll do a deity work live for you all. How about that?
Yeah, that'd be cool. Plus, like, it'd be good. I know a lot of you follow and work, and some of you worship different ones, and I'd love to read more about all of that for what you're all doing because that's the whole point of this. I think we can all work with different folks and do our best and still acknowledge each other and learn from one another.
Yeah.
So that's what makes community cool.
Yeah. My focus going into the new year, as far as my channeling, is I'm doing a lot of channeling historic people who lived in the way, way past, like historical figures and stuff, and doing history based things. Because that's been really fun for me lately. And you're kind of doing similar stuff. And I appreciate that mirroring that's occurring.
Yeah.
It's been really fun. It's so fun.
No, I'm excited for that. And I started to, because you have like you have a new series on your TikTok.
I
Uh,
do.
I thought that's been cool. Something that I'm doing similar but different. My spirit guide, I'm asking, or I'm working with her on things that she does in other places.
Yeah.
So it's been a wild ride, but it's also been very good for my channeling because I'll get these imagery things and I'll just be like, where were you? What,
Hmm.
huh? What were you doing? But it helps kind of expand my mind a bit more so that when I'm working on other things and channeling for other things, other guides, it's less shocking and my brain doesn't have to compensate to figure it out as much.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that I'm looking to write more in smaller capacities on that this upcoming year, but more of a it's going to be more of like a mythology, fantasy, fiction.
Mm,
Because yeah,
get it.
well, I'm not going to sit here and be like everybody has to believe that this happened to my guide. Like now, I'm just going to be like, hey, here's a story about a being from a place doing some stuff.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a lot of like, I think that's a lot of history stuff too. It's been really fun because obviously I started doing a lot of this ancient history stuff because of the book I'm writing, Lacusta, which there's not a lot of information about a lot of her original people, the Gaulish people, because there was no like written language. So a lot of it was like, here, this is stuff that happened. And then I had to like go into like archaeological record and check and see if that was even a thing to like translate it over. And a lot of stuff you can't do that. So it is just like, well, it's a historical fiction. You don't have to believe it, but this is what I was very clearly told by Lacusta, and she was not budging on it. So now it's on this paper.
I love it. I love it.
Mhm.
And uh, hey, I'll plug Forgotten Storytellers for a minute, having done it
Thank
myself.
you.
Uh, the whole concept of we're always channeling something. Like
Hmm.
in your case, it's going to be as this high vibe fiction story, though you know the truth. And when you're channeling characters, it's weird calling them characters, but when you're
I
channeling
know.
like characters for stories, that's exactly that. Did I is there still a spot open? Did I hear that? Was that updated from the podcast that I totally listened to this morning, Alchemist Inkwell, that I love so much? Did
Thank you, Rebecca. So the Alchemist Inkwell is the name of my podcast. We still have one or two. I have to double check. I haven't looked at that email today. Maybe one or two openings for the Forgotten Storytellers, which is my fiction writing program. Rebecca's gone through it. Basically, we teach you how to write high vibration fiction. Basically, how to channel in guides and characters and put their stories down in a way that inspires and activates others. That's high vibe fiction. We help you with that. It's super fun. We write books together and talk to spirits and look at the stars, and it's awesome. So if you're interested, forgottenstorytellers.com or link in my bio. I'm just gonna say it since we're almost ending anyway.
yeah.
But you just submit a messy pitch idea. It's literally like 2 sentences of like, this is what I want to write about, and then we set up a meeting time with you. So feel free. We still have a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Thank you for
I,
your pitch of that. I appreciate it.
of course. Hey, I always give appreciation when appreciation's due. Like, or at least I always try to. And I'm appreciative of the things that you've done, your courses that you put out. That's just it's been helpful to me, and it's exciting to
Also,
see that you're what.
Rebekah has an amazing Facebook group that you should totally join. And also, she does mediumship led consultations that are really, really neat. And I highly recommend them as well. So, like, please throw energy over there, especially if you're really aligned with like ghost communication. Rebekah, for sure.
I talk to ghosts,
I just,
among other things, but
we just need to
yeah,
go. We need to plan a trip together, like somewhere far away, and just like stream it all and just talk to all of the people.
I would love that. Let's manifest that, because I'm
Okay.
traveling a lot this year, and I know you are as well.
Yeah.
So we will figure that out. But yeah, I'm Patreon is primarily where I'm at. That's where the community is. I
Mhm.
am doing a course a month. I'm doing a workshop a month where people can actually talk with me. I also do exclusive ghost tours where there's a lot of time for people to pick up reads on their own, and then we discuss them later. Um, so yeah,
That's cool.
yeah, it's something I wanted to give more back to my Patreons, and it's been a really cool experience, especially having those workshops because it's a smaller group, and we're able to really talk about all the things that were discussed throughout the month, and something else. They're not quite in print yet, but they will be soon. I created some journals for people who are trying to decipher their dreams, for people who are starting to lean into mediumship and are having issues, say, like organizing their thoughts or organizing their feelings on things. And I also created a journal for oneself. I called it Spirit Space because I was just like, where's the person at the end of the day or the end of the week or that kind of thing. So those will be published soon, and I'll make an announcement when those are. But the whole purpose of it is to help people organize their thoughts on these things and to give people their own validation through their own experiences. So, very excited about that.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about that. That is fantastic. That is super duper awesome. It's so funny. I'll tell you about it later, actually. I'm not going to say that one on live. I'll talk to you about that one later. But that is so cool. I love that.
Love this.
Also, you're going to repost this to YouTube, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I will post it as soon as possible. If not tomorrow, then Saturday or Sunday. Hopefully tomorrow. We'll see. It depends on how late I come back from eating donuts. That's an important part of my Friday.
I love that. I appreciate that. I recently read my new, probably all-time favorite book. It's called Light from Uncommon Stars, and it makes you crave donuts. So the other day I was like, I have to go get donuts. It's like non-negotiable for me. So I get it. Donuts are important.
Yes. There's a
Hmm.
lady that sells potato donuts. It's a family recipe, and she has this little shop that's a few blocks away. And I do not regret eating the amount of donuts that I have had since I've moved to this house.
I would not regret it either. It's amazing. Oh, well, thank you. This has been super fun. I do have to go eat though. I am like really hungry.
Go eat. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Thank you. I
Hmm.
adore our lives, and I know so many people.
Yes.
I've had so much praise. So thanks everybody
Yes.
for joining. And
Love you all. Love
yes.
you. Thank you.
All right. I'll see you later.
Bye, everyone. Mwah.